Hello and welcome to today's NeoSystems CMMC Town Hall. Now I'd like to introduce your host, Ed Bassett from NeoSystems. Ed?
Hi, thank you, Don. Welcome everyone to our continuing series of Town Hall Ask Me Anything sessions on Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or CMMC. My guest today is Mary Jo Thomas from General Dynamics Bath Iron Works. I want to remind the audience that we are recording these sessions as part of our community outreach to the Defense Industrial Base, with a focus primarily on organizations that are seeking certification under CMMC and other contractors trying to achieve a good level of cybersecurity and security in general, I will say. Audience members, please send in any questions that you have during the session today. I will work those into the questions and try to answer as many as we can in our 30-minute time slot today. Let me start with a introduction of Mary Jo, or MJ Thomas. She has a distinguished career in government as an Air Force officer, a state police officer, and nearly 20 years in the FBI, focusing on counterintelligence and counterterrorism. She's now the Director of Security at General Dynamics Bath Iron Works, where she manages all the security functions, including cyber, industrial, and physical security. Certainly with this background, MJ is an expert in the protection of weapons, technology, intellectual property, all the things that underpin our national security. So MJ, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be invited to these things. These are great and awesome.
Thanks. So in this series, we focus primarily on the CMMC initiative. And as you know, that initiative was motivated primarily by a really disturbing loss of intellectual property amounting to, just large amounts of dollars affecting a lot of different weapon systems and things important to national security. And we're losing this to state-sponsored adversaries. So I think pretty much everyone, even the critics of CMMC, they still seem to agree that we need to do a better job at deterring these attacks. So you have a lot of firsthand knowledge in how successful those adversaries have been and why that's the case. So can you give us maybe just a little bit of high-level context? What is the threat? Why are they successful in attacking the defense industrial base?
So, I've been working this for over a decade now. I ran the FBI's counterproliferation program, and many years ago when we were working cyber, we had a duty to inform contractors who had been compromised, and we would tell them how they're being compromised. And I'm not saying they didn't take the time to fix it, but updating your system costs money, and I sometimes don't think they had it, and it was not enforceable. So, the adversary takes advantage of all the soft targets we have, from academia to joint ventures to, non-traditional collectors and the talent programs. We have a very open society. We share an awful lot. We're a very trusting country, and I think that has kind of worked against us now. And it's taken a long time to educate folks on we need to elevate security. We truly need to elevate it and get people in these security roles that understand counterintelligence and know where the soft spots are and know how to plug them up.
So the promise of CMMC is to reach all corners of the defense industrial base and really raise the bar around cyber. And I think you have a very broad perspective, so CMMC maybe not the center of your universe, but certainly it's a piece of the action, but there's so much more going on. If we're trying to improve our performance against those threats, how important is it to reach everywhere? And is CMMC the right thing at the right time to get that job done?
I think CMC is wonderful, and I wish it was here 10 years ago. I can't thank Katie Arrington enough and the effort she's done to push this through. I do believe it's like the tip of the iceberg. We have to do supply chain and everything else. But the best thing about CMMC and what Katie is doing is, her words, she is absolutely baking into the contract. So my struggle here is I can have rock star solutions for security challenges here. And when I try to implement them, I'm just told it's not an obligation because it's not in the contract. There's absolutely no requirement to do this. So I kind of throw my hands up frustrated sometimes, though General Dynamics is absolutely awesome and gives me, free, lanes to go and work. I sometimes we have challenges with maybe the Navy because, it's not in the contract. And so, like I said, even if it costs some money to maybe update some security processes, I just can't get it to turn my way.
So the idea of economic motivation and what's required and what's not is really at the center of this. And I think you were on a recent panel on our Uniting Women in Cyber event, and I heard you talk about the disconnect sometimes between procurement and security and things that you may be trying to do while there's other sort of economic motivations going on. So there's been quite a bit of policy discussion in DoD about how to make security an equal status pillar in the procurement equation. And, providing an economic incentive to companies that do a good job on cybersecurity and I guess penalizing those that don't. Those changes are starting to happen. Security still, though, I think, I agree with you, it's often viewed as somewhat of an impediment and not necessarily an enhancer. What do we need to do to close the gap between economic motivation to get deals done and make things happen and the need to exercise caution, reduce risk, all those factors?
So I would be stealing the line from either Bill Stevens from DCSA or Chris Nissen from MITRE that unfortunately, and it's no fault of anybody's, but we have business people in procurement making counterintelligence and security decisions. I really, this is MJ, believe that security should even be at the table when we're putting one of these contracts together, because I have like security challenges here. Now I'm kind of like piecing them together to kind of accommodate the contract. And I also think that the contract should perhaps be a living document. A contract that we signed 5 years ago is not keeping up with the technology of today. And so, you're trying to match them up and maintain that security posture. With the best thing for me since I've been here was the new Section 889 of NDAA that rolled out that forbid covered telecommunications from being either incorporated into the defense industrial base or baked into your product for the defense. And the challenge here, whether it's, ZTE or, Hikvision, all these, is that I thought it was a little unfair that these 5 companies that they named from China are prohibited and their affiliates. But I haven't seen the list of affiliates. I mean, I know what the affiliates are because they're identified through federal investigations, but that has to be a list that's constantly updated. And that's what I fear in procurement. They won't be able to kind of keep up with the list of associates affiliated with Huawei and ZTE, et cetera.
So, General Dynamics obviously solving that problem of bringing counterintelligence to the table by hiring you with a career full of experience, that's a luxury that smaller defense contractors don't have, right? I mean, they don't have people with your skills and background on staff. First, there's not that many. There's not that much of that talent in the world, and it's a big hire for a small company to say so how could smaller companies get access to that so that they're making informed decisions on those topics?
Well, I understand. I think that is one of the challenges of CMMC. Small companies maybe find that they can't afford it. And I think Katie's doing a lot of work to that everybody can find a way to participate. I think that venues like this, I think you have to self-educate, and really there are lots of groups who talk about the threat. I mean, the threat's in the news almost every single day. We're arresting another, talent program member or, academic who's stealing defense technology. I'm like I said, I've only been here like 4 months after leaving the Pentagon. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to not only educate people like small businesses, and I don't want to get ahead of your questions, but just educate the people here at Bath Iron Works. So you've got, obviously at Bath Iron Works, you make big things, so you have a large, complex supply chain. That supply chain and how well it protects things is certainly important to the ultimate end goal of protecting what is you're doing at Bath Iron Works. So what do you think are some of the biggest challenges in that area, and what's your advice on how we can progress in terms of understanding those risks within the supply chain and then reducing them? Well, I really think that, I think this is like part 2 of Katie Arrington, is vetting the supply chain. I mean, the supply chain absolutely has to be vetted. I've quickly looked at a few companies that we use in our supply chain, and maybe I'm a little too harsh because I'm a counterintelligence person, but I wouldn't necessarily contract with these people. I mean, there are a ton of different folks we can buy widgets from. Do we have to buy these widgets, or because they're affiliated with certain other entities? I think I am trying to educate the people here on the importance of vetting the supply chain. It all works together, and Katie's doing her thing with CMMC. We have to adopt that. We have to educate on that. We have to vet the supply chain. We have to monitor the insider threat. All those kind of things are all kind of packaged together to ensure that the product that we provide to the Navy is uncompromised.
So you could do some things to vet the supply chain. I think one of the things I've heard Katie talk about is, the supply chain, the people who are in that supply chain need to decide ultimately, are they willing to do business with the DoD, meaning do a good job of protecting that stuff, or not, right? We're raising the bar, and people are going to have to decide if they're in or they're out. So do you see that the general defense industry, are we making progress in this area? Do you see the suppliers that you're talking to, are they becoming more aware, more proactive? Or is this still kind of in the reactive mode?
Oh, definitely reactive. I think that that once the part 2 of 889 rolled out, everybody was kind of running around seeing if any of the, the telecommunications equipment that we had was affiliated with one of the, covered telecommunications companies. And so you'd look on the outside, and this is a counterintelligence person, they look out on the outside and, it would be a name brand that we were comfortable with. And they said, oh, that's okay. I said, open the thing up.
Look inside.
And there's a Hikvision card inside of it. I said, you guys, you got to go deep here. You just can't do the surface thing. So.
Good point. So still in the reactive mode at this point. You're thinking, yeah. One of the comments that you made in that Uniting Women in Cyber panel discussion last week was about insider threat, and specifically you mentioned recruitment of staff by foreign agents on LinkedIn. So I want to look at that a little bit, because that's something that we don't talk about a lot, is the human element, right? We get really focused on the cyber and the tech aspects of this, but the human element is still a pretty significant part of our defenses. So do you feel that CMMC addresses this adequately? I mean, awareness training, we know even at its best, it's marginally effective. What else do we need to focus on the human side that maybe needs some more attention?
So I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget it. And now I have to find my notes. That the FBI and NCSC just put out like a mini movie, and it's called Never Night. And if you go to the www.fbi.gov, you can find this. And the company they have as the business company is called Raven, but it's supposed to be like LinkedIn. And the Chinese are taking advantage of this, and people, they cater to their, their egos. You do great things, and we'd like to have you come and lecture, and we'll pay for it all. And I'm telling you, don't do it. So, we can't monitor LinkedIn. I mean, you and I use LinkedIn. It's a good tool for everybody wanting to find another opportunity. So I don't want to be spying on people, but I do tend to look at it when people, so I had to kind of marry up with HR and say, if wherever someone gives their 2-week notice, or we're letting somebody go, or somebody's been highly disciplined, I want all that information in order to kind of put it on cyber and have certain monitoring going on to ensure that there's no exfil of intellectual property or CUI. So that's kind of, I kind of have to incorporate all these vectors into my security plan.
And I think, that's, above and beyond what most people are doing today, right? I think that's a complex thing to keep an eye on across a large employee base, right?
And I think I'm not saying it's a problem, and you kind of already framed it. There are not a ton of MJ Thomases out there, but there are a lot of counterintelligence people out there. And we're fighting a counterintelligence battle right now. And you just can't do that with locks and gates. You really have to have those people. I'm kind of a more strategic person. I kind of think, if we do this, what will happen after that? What are my contingencies? If they should compromise this, I need to have 3 or 4 contingencies. But that's years of being in the FBI and always looking for contingencies. So no, I bake a lot into my security plan. I think it makes my boss's head spin.
It's probably a good thing. So I've got an audience question I want to work in. So there's a our audience mostly are organizations seeking certification. So their main interest is in, how do I achieve and maintain certification? What is it I have to do? We get a lot of questions about cost and what exactly should I do? They don't want to do the wrong thing. They don't want to overspend. They don't want to underspend. So as I'll ask this in kind of a two-part question to get the audience perspective in there. But as you look at some of those challenges, is this a simple matter of doing the right thing? CMMC publishes a standard. That standard says, here's what you should do. Should people just do the right thing? What's there, or is there more needed? Katie makes the point that CMMC is not a checklist. It's not just a matter of checking the boxes. Is there more needed in terms of new ways of doing business, new technologies, new services, new approaches, beyond just doing the right thing?
Well, I think what, like she says, this is your baseline. You know what I mean? This is what you need as a baseline if you want to do business with the government. But people have to be, the adversary is constantly changing how they operate. As soon as we kind of shut down one vector, they're going to go another vector. You'll see more recruitment of US persons now versus trying to come here and steal things, or more cyber attacks, So, once you get yourself and you're certified, it's not like you can kick back for 3 years and, we're certified for 3 years. We don't have, you constantly, this thing is constantly changing, and you have to be well educated. I mean, I'm lucky. I have a great group of cyber people who are passionate about it. They love to learn more about what the adversary's doing. So I've shared some of my experience with them, and they're kind of they never saw it themselves as being vulnerable that way. And so I do think it's a continued monitoring thing. You continually have to evolve. And then when you get recertified, I mean, I don't know what part 2 is going to look, or phase 2 is going to look like, but I'm sure they're going to up the ante, to recertify you.
We've seen that in other places, PCI, HIPAA, right? As the maturity increases, the level of scrutiny increases, and so I would expect that same thing here. So here's the audience part of that question. So this is someone who says, we're at level 1. We will never be more than level 1 because of our business. We don't handle cyber services or telecommunications or electronics. We make carrying cases for OEMs that sell to the government. And we've been asked as part of the supply chain to be CMMC certified. I did the self-assessment. What is our next move? So for companies like that feel like maybe they're a little bit on the sidelines because they're not in the sort of the line of fire from a cyber perspective, what's their next move?
I don't want to get Katie calling me up after this. I'm not sure I know what the next is. It sounds like they've done everything that they have been required to do to get that certification level. But I would continue to monitor whatever's being changed. There might be, I don't know exactly what the product they're making is. Like you said, it's block cases or something.
Carrying cases in this case, yeah.
But all of a sudden, the mechanics to their special lock gets hacked, and the government has purchased a zillion of these, and so they're easy to get into. So they do have intellectual property, or the Department of Defense wouldn't have entrusted them with this contract. So I keep telling people, you just can't be one and done. You have to. I read stuff all day long trying to keep up to date on what the current threat is.
I think that's super important, just to keep, like you say, it's the threats evolving. What we're doing around security is evolving for sure. So one of the, we've explored on these town hall sessions, we've explored a lot of different aspects of CMMC, and one of the things that has come up in a lot of different perspectives is whether or not this is actually achievable by small companies. So the audience question I asked, they were looking for level 1. Folks have made the case that level 1 is fairly simple and pretty much a modest effort from a cyber perspective will get you there. But level 3, it's a significant lift for a lot of companies. So the question is it really achievable? Everybody seems to agree that it's necessary to protect the weakest links, since that's where the adversaries seem to focus. What are your thoughts on achievability? I mean, do you think that CMMC will be effective in actually reaching those weakest links? Do you think it's achievable for everyone who wants to do business with the DoD?
I mean, I do. I think it's achievable. I mean, I think these things were achievable, for a long time. It's just taking, an awful thing to happen. I think I think someone in one of the Zooms we did a few weeks ago, that China has stolen like 1% of the GDP, and I could sit here all day long and talk to you about the cases where defense technology and defense research has been stolen. So I do think we want to achieve it. And, I don't know how Katie takes in input, or I think she's willing to work with people. I think she put it out there for feedback. We might have challenges with this. And I think she would incorporate all that into finding a solution, but I don't see it. I mean, we got to level 3, and I think it's a 110 score, and we got a 107. I mean, we still have things that we need to improve as well. I didn't say it was going to be easy, but I think it's achievable.
Yeah, we've talked about it a lot on these sessions, and trying to, one, illustrate that it is achievable, and I guess give people some advice on how. So what, I'm sure of Bath Iron Works suppliers, some of them fall into this category. Some of them may be listening here today. What are you doing to enable those small businesses for whom those requirements are a challenge? People who are, maybe coming to you with questions or don't have the resources to tackle this. Is that something that you have as a formalized program, or are you addressing as needed? I mean, what are you hearing from your suppliers?
Well, I'm going to be brutally honest here. The problem here is that procurement and security are not talking to each other, So if someone calls procurement and says, listen, I need to get to my CMC level 2 or level 1, I don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean? So I've been trying to recruit procurement to kind of understand the threat in supply chain. But like I said earlier in our chat, it's not a requirement in the contract. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so the contracts that we have, CMC is not a requirement.
CMC is not, but the NIST 800-171 has been in there for a couple of years.
Yes.
The new DFAR has put some enforcement out for that. So I think in that sense, even though CMMC is still a future requirement, the majority of it, 110 of the 130 things that sit at level 3 are requirements, today for people who have controlled unclassified information or other kind of things. So that I would think that new DFARS gives you maybe some more things to hang that on, right? As far as yes, it's mandatory.
So yes, and so we've been of that part. I've been really enforcing not just the the CUI, the cyber part of it, but the actual paper part of it. Mm-hmm. And because we have a lot of engineers, and we have big ships, and there's blueprints that I'm now kind of educating and enforcing this, the securing of paper CUI in media at the end of the day. And boy, there's some pushback there, So, and I think I would take partially my fault that I need to get into this education thing. You really need to bring people together. I need to walk through the threat with them, make them understand why this is important, why we have to do this as a company. And I've been asked to do that. So there's multiple phases here, even for the companies, even for the small companies who really want to have, their CEO support them. We're going to have to spend a lot of time educating people so we can make these things happen.
So you mentioned, you guys calculated your score. The people who are coming to our events we've seen are heavily biased towards the early adopter crowd, right? These are folks that they're coming here because they're interested. They want to calculate the score. They want that score to be good. I suspect there's some stragglers out there, and I guess the people that are really not embracing this, and not, if they did calculate their score, it wouldn't be a very good one, and are you concerned about those stragglers, and what do you see as some of the impacts that, things like having a really poor assessment score or missing CMMC certification as we get to that requirement, maybe far down in the supply chain? What are those potential impacts to you as a prime as you're trying to pull this together? You mentioned earlier, you have a lot of people you could buy widgets from. So in some cases, it could be a matter of just switching suppliers. In other cases, maybe sole source providers. What do you see as those impacts, and what are the steps you're taking to avoid those?
Well, we're talking about different kinds of widgets. Sometimes it's, if we're talking tires or whatever, something that's not microelectronics, doesn't communicate, can't be kind of digitally compromised. I think there was a part in there that said, if you fail it the first time, it doesn't mean you're out. You have to, we're correcting things, we have to correct things. I just think if you want to do business with the Department of Defense, you have to ensure that you're not delivering a compromised product. And that's really what it's all about. We had a subcontractor a couple of weeks ago that had a ransomware attack. And, the cyber guys kind of did their assessment, and, that this company had a lot of holes in it. And that's the other thing. And I'm not sure if that's going to come out, but, it'd be nice if we had kind of a place we could go, to find those trusted vendors. I think they have FedRAMP now, that we can go to and find folks. So, I mean, I know it's a struggle, and I know that folks are working towards that. It might be a combination of not just, partnering with security, trying to figure out collaboratively with your colleagues in your company, how maybe, getting input from them will improve your score. That's what I'm trying to do here, is collaborate with everybody from supply chain and procurement to logistics and HR to security. I've got to get everybody to buy in to supporting CMMC.
Make security everybody's job, right? So
Yeah.
You mentioned the supplier maybe had a ransomware attack. Is that typical that you were involved in? It sounds like that you were involved in helping them to respond to that. Is that a common thing where you're helping them out, or was it something where they came and asked for help without revealing any details of an actual incident? Just in a general sense, I guess, in terms of how you interact with those suppliers out there.
Well, I would like to say we work together, but quite frankly, we found out by accident. There was the procurement calling about a billing issue or something like that, an administrative issue. And they were trying to follow up on that and kind of maybe hadn't had their calls returned, and they finally got a hold of someone. And then it was revealed that they were trying to communicate off of Gmail because they couldn't even get into their system at all. So we tried to explain to them, they have a requirement to report this because they're a defense subcontractor. So, it was just walking them through the whole process. And so, yes, in that way, we tried to help and educate them, because I'm sure they were very frustrated about their situation. So, I would like it to be that, if we hire a new subcontractor, one of my requirements is to continue to work with them and educate them. I don't want to be so disconnected from the supply chain. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I just want to we buy the widget and then you go away. I want to stay connected to all those aspects of stuff that's coming into the company.
I think there's a lot of symbiosis there between the larger primes that have more resources at their disposal and some of the smaller companies that don't. And I think, bridging that gap is important. And information share, you mentioned the reporting requirement. I mean, they have a requirement under DFARS to report that to you as and all their customers that were affected. Maybe they weren't even aware of that, or I'm not going to say they're ignoring it or not, but I mean, that's, that kind of information sharing and getting to the point where it's like, okay, you're going to report it to us, and now instead of punishing you, we're going to help you to resolve it. That's a obviously how as a community we ought to be, I think, coming together to do that sort of thing.
So just like a tiny example is when I was working counterterrorism, 9/11 happened. I was in Pennsylvania. I got kind of sucked into all that. And then I was working terrorist financing. They stood up terrorist financing. So I had to work with the banks. And if a bank had a terrorism account, they would just kick them out and they wouldn't tell the other banks. And so they'd go to this other bank and we'd figure it out and they would kick them out, but they wouldn't tell the other banks. And so I finally brought the banks together and said, why don't we just all talk to each other and say, hey, this is a bad guy. Don't open up your account with him. And that's kind of what I see us doing here is I think we have to get over the newness of it all. But later, if there's a company who's absolutely not going to comply or it becomes a problematic company, I would like to be able to say, well, we're going to have to, and which is, we don't have to report you for not complying because you're problematic, instead of the other defense contractors going over there and have to have the same maybe negative experience.
And the flip side is helping those who are genuinely trying to do a good job. And Ellen Lord talked about, very early back in December, she talked about this as CMMC was just coming to light, that she expected the larger primes to be sort of, she used the word help desk, right? To be actually helping these smaller companies to succeed. And I think that's a really important part of achievability is the kind of thing that you're describing where you not just educating, but actually saying, hey, we recognize this is a negative thing. We're going to help to resolve it. You may have some more resources at your disposal.
Company.
Yeah.
We kind of walked them through it and said, we understood they were under some level of duress and couldn't do it. So we said, these are the steps you need to take. And so my my guys really accommodated them, and we're continuing, quite frankly, to work with them now because, you know, we have material that we shared with them and we need to account for them.
Cool. So we're near the end of our time. I want to ask kind of a wrap-up question. And, you know, I always like at the end of these sessions to ask for feedback on the direction of the overall CMMC program. Broaden that out if you like, beyond just CMMC. Though, you know, the folks that are putting it together and have been doing a great deal of listening. They've made that really a important design principle that they're taking a lot of industry input. But I think you in particular, because you have a government career and now looking at this from the industry side, that's a somewhat unique perspective. And I'd like to get maybe what's your, now that you're seeing the industry side of this as your full-time job, what's your number one piece of advice to those still in government that are shaping CMMC and our overall strategy in this area to make this more effective against the actual threats we face as a nation?
Well, I think I kind of said that in the beginning that, you know, when I want to implement and do something like vet the supply chain, you know, I'm struggling with the contract that exists that we're working under. I wish that we could, much like you're saying with CMMC, there's parts of it we have to comply with right now. And I wish we could kind of amend things a little bit to not wait until the next contract, you know, comes out in, you know, 3 years or whatever. You know, I want to start protecting things today, you know, not, and I would like, listen, things are changing. We need to vet the supply chain. The contracts is going to be amended so we can comply with this requirement. We just can't do partial things. I mean, we have to be holistic about security and do it with CMMC and do it with supply chain and do it with insider threat. You know, we have to kind of, they're all very important and we have to focus on them all at the same time. And so I wish there was some flexibility in the contracts. If I was talking to, you know, the Pentagon again, I'd say, please, could you create a little flexibility in the contract for me?
It's good advice. Well, MJ, thanks very much for joining us today. This was really, really excellent information. And thanks to the audience members. Please come back and join us for some future town hall meetings. We are going to be taking a short break in this town hall series. So next week we're off for Veterans Day, and we're going to be off the week of the Thanksgiving holiday. So we will have a session on the 18th, and we will be back then in December after Thanksgiving on December 2nd. I also want to mention Cybersecurity Summit, which is an event we're planning. It's an all-day virtual event on November 17th that we're planning in conjunction with Federal Publication Seminars. That's got a very packed agenda of a broad range of cybersecurity topics, including CMMC, including staffing, including sort of what the government's doing around cybersecurity spending. So it's a very full-fledged day. Be sure to update your calendars for November 17th. That is a new date from the October date that was originally put out. If you need details on those events, future town halls, or the Cybersecurity Summit, please go to our website, neosystemscorp.com, for those details. Thanks, everybody, and have a good day.